Last week, when we buried my brother, there was so much I wanted to say, but I couldn't do it. You see, I simply could not speak. I didn't express myself, and it has been a burden on my soul, what I wanted to say, and I couldn't. I couldn't speak. I couldn't find the words. I didn't express myself. So I thank you for this second opportunity, and I will do my best to tell you some things about Vincent. I'm really not sure where to start. I suppose I should tell you that he was a lover. It's true. My brother, Vincent Van Gogh, the lover. He was a lover of God, a lover of love, and a lover of art, of course. In his lifetime, he believed he'd failed at all three. Now, to say that he worked hard at all three, that would simply not be true. He didn't work hard at them. He never worked at them. He attacked them. He surrounded them. He schemed. He planned. He gathered his forces like a general going into battle, and then, with what might be called an overdeveloped sense of drama, he attacked. For years, he battled against everything. From the time he was 27, 10 years ago, until he died last week, my brother poured more effort, more passion, more love into his life and work than any 10 men. Now, I'm not going to ask you to believe that he was perfect. He was far from perfect. And he seemed to thrive on failure. Forgive me, Vincent, but it's true. He never accepted even the slightest success. Oh, he wanted it, sure. He hungered for it. But he was terrified of it. Terrified. He used to say to me, "Theo, let me tell you about success. The fireflies of South America are extremely successful. Why, they burn so brightly that ladies stick pins in them to wear them in their hair. So much for success." Terrified. He never allowed himself to believe he had accomplished anything. He stayed with me for a while here in Paris. And I must say, his visit absolutely wore me out. I think I should have become quite ill if he'd stayed any longer. He was just so confident, so strong in his opinions, so fierce, absolutely fierce in his arguments. He could go on and on forever, all night. It would happen every night. I'd come home from work at the gallery, and it would begin. And he'd go on and on. And if I tried to avoid the argument, well, Vincent simply argued both sides himself. He met so many artists in Paris, artists whose work he admired. Pissarro, Seurat, Toulouse-Lautrec, Bernard, Gauguin. And they could talk for hours and hours about everything, their troubles, their work, about art dealers. Gauguin, Monsieur Paul Gauguin. I wish he had never met Gauguin. That was the beginning of the end. Tragic. See, Vincent left. He went to move to the town of Arles in the south, and, well, for me it was a relief. My health wasn't good, and it was a blessing to live peacefully again. But Vincent was lonely. He worked in fits and starts of passion, and then he would drink to calm himself, and always he was lonely. Well, Gauguin, he was in a hard time. He had a reputation as an artist, but no money, no support. Well, for Vincent, this was perfect. He'd found another soul to save. We must help Gauguin, he said. We must bring him here to Arles for a rest. It will be grand for both of us. We will start a community of artists. Gauguin will head the studio. For weeks, day and night, Vincent painted for Gauguin, to impress Gauguin, to make his room bright and cheerful. We must buy furniture for Gauguin. We must decorate for Gauguin. For Gauguin, for Gauguin, for Gauguin, everything for Gauguin. And then he came. Gauguin arrived, and for Vincent the ground shook when Gauguin stepped. Why? Why did he admire him so? I mean, yes, he is a fine artist, but Vincent was doing beautiful work himself. And when Gauguin saw fit to tell Vincent this, oh, no, that was too much praise from such a giant. I sold paintings for Gauguin. Vincent wouldn't allow me to even exhibit his work. Heaven forbid someone might actually buy it. And then Gauguin would no longer be a god, you see. He would no longer stand alone as an artist who's actually paid for his work. They argued together, they worked together, and they whored together. I am writing in haste, as we have loads of work to do. Gauguin and I intend to make a tour of the brothels pretty often, so as to study them. Yes. Gauguin is good for me. Gauguin is wise. Gauguin is brilliant. Gauguin is a bastard. And that is the simple truth. I began to argue violently, and Gauguin would threaten to leave. Well, he certainly knew how to do that, didn't he? He'd already left his wife and 5 children, left them without a penny. And Vincent was exhausted. Vincent was terrified of being left alone again. And Gauguin was clever. Oh, so clever. He knew just how to push Vincent right to the edge. They began to argue violently, night after night. One night, to end an argument, Vincent threw a drink in Gauguin's face. Well, that ended that argument. The next night, another argument. And Gauguin paraded out into the night like a matador, leaving poor Vincent alone like a wounded bull. So Vincent chased him into the street, carrying a razor. Well, Gauguin heard him coming. He stopped, turned, and they just stared at each other in the dark. And of course, Vincent couldn't hurt Gauguin. No, he couldn't hurt this god that walked the earth. So he went back to his room, and he hurt himself instead. Yes, as I'm sure you've all heard the story. He cut off his own ear, or most of it anyway. And then he wrapped it in a piece of cloth. He tied a ribbon around it, and he carried it to the local brothel. There was a prostitute there named Rachel who used to like to mock her customers. Like a parrot, she'd say, 5 francs or cut off your ear. 5 francs or cut off your ear. So Vincent walked up to her, placed the package in her hand, said, "Guard this object very carefully." Then he went back to his room and he collapsed. Jesus, Vincent. When will you learn? Love the poor. Love the hungry. Love the destitute. Love the homeless. Even love a bastard like Gauguin. But when will you learn to love yourself? Dear Thea, I write to you in full possession of my faculties, and not as a madman, but as the brother you know. This is the truth. A certain number of people here, there were more than 80 signatures, addressed a petition to the mayor, describing me as a man not fit to be at liberty, or something like that. The commissioner of police then gave the order to shut me up for the good of the community. Anyhow, here I am, shut up under lock and key with keepers, without my guilt being proved or even open to proof. If I did not have your friendship, I should be driven to suicide. And cowardly as I am, I should commit it in the end. If the police had protected my liberty by preventing the children and even the grown-ups from crowding around my house and climbing the windows as they have done, as if I were a curious animal, I should have more easily retained my self-possession. In any event, I have done no harm to anyone. For the time being, I should prefer to remain inside, as much for my own peace of mind as for other people. My dear friend Gauguin, I take the opportunity of my first absence from the hospital to write you a few words of very deep and sincere friendship. I often thought of you in the hospital. The next 6 months were the best and the worst. Vincent's painting had come out of the darkness. His colors were seasoned bright. He saw the wheat fields and the cornfields with a special vision of beauty. He said, "I feel as though nature has spoken to me." The doctor's report was encouraging. Vincent himself felt confident. But then he had a relapse. Worse than the hell, the torment of his illness, were the good people of the town of Arles. They thought him mad, some kind of a freak. In fact, they would have driven him mad. They teased him, laughed at him, chased him through the streets. They climbed the trees outside his windows to get a better look at the creature. They even threw garbage at him. When will you stop? When will you stop? What do you expect? What do you want? What do you want your artists to be? Your thinkers, your visionaries, your philosophers. What do you expect? Can you not just accept the contribution of the individual? Or must he satisfy your social needs as well? I have heard it said among you that he was different. Oh, he was mad, he was strange, he was not like us. No, he was different. And you are blessed by that difference. He gave you beauty. Some of you, someday, may understand that beauty. Some of you still may yet profit by it. Oh, his paintings will be sold and resold at higher and higher profits because Vincent was different. If a poet touches your soul, gives you a special spiritual connection with the rest of mankind, isn't that enough? Must he also have perfect table manners? If the artist sacrifices his comfort, risks his life to bring you his special vision of beauty, must he also be dressed by your tailor? He had hurt no one but himself. He could have handled being loved, or being liked, or even just being left alone. But no, they pursued him like a hunted animal. Vincent was not mad, my friends, but he chose the relative peace of the asylum of Saint-Remy. There, among the mad, he found a little peace. When he painted in the courtyard there, the other patients would come to watch him. Though here there are some patients very seriously ill, the fear and horror of madness that I used to have has lessened a great deal. And though here you continually hear terrible cries and howls, like beasts in a menagerie, in spite of that, people get to know each other and to help each other when their attacks come on. When I am working in the garden, they all come to look, and I assure you, they have the discretion and the manners to leave me alone, more than the good people of the town of Arles. And now, everything he was, all the beauty, all the passion, the power of his love of life, of mankind, and of nature, his talent, his draftsmanship, his control had reached such a level he could turn out 2 beautiful canvases in a day. He'd start at sunrise, paint furiously until noon, finish 1 canvas, and then eat a piece of bread, turn his easel in another direction, and begin again. At the end of the day, he would stumble home exhausted, but with 2 magnificent canvases under his arm. Sometimes he even painted at night, and he would put candles on his hat to throw light on his canvas. In the last 70 days, these last 70, he produced 100 pieces of work, 70 oils, and 30 drawings. In the last year of his life, he turned out 200 pieces of work. Not the work of a madman. No, he was sick. Terribly sick. Epilepsy. That's what the doctors told me. I have the reports here from Dr. Ray, his physician at Arles, an epileptic crisis. Dr. Perron, the chief surgeon at Saint-Remy, attack of epilepsy. He had seizures, a number of seizures, and the attacks terrified him. They would terrify anyone. The man was drained physically and emotionally. He was terrified. Voices, terrible voices, visions, hallucinations. One time they found him actually eating his own paints. Another time he drank the kerosene from out of the lamps. One day, he was allowed to go alone into the fields to paint. He didn't return. When they found him, he was clinging to a tree, crying. He screamed in terror when they tried to tear him free. He believed the tree had captured his soul, and that he would die if they took him from it. And when each attack ended, he lived in terror of the next attack, which he knew would come. But with all of this, still, when he was well enough to paint, he painted. Through the iron-barred window of my room, I see a square field of wheat in an enclosure, a perspective above which I see the morning sun rising in all its glory. And then one day, one joyous, incredible, miraculous day, 4.5 months ago, we sold one of his paintings, The Red Vines. It sold in Brussels for 400 francs. Now, I address myself to Monsieur Ernest Clauson, critic, author of the following. In The Red Vines by Vincent van Gogh, if one assumes an ordinary point of view in judging this painting, what does one say of the irradiating light, the diffusion of flaming rays, the vineyard in blood-drenched colors, and an orgy of warm and intense tonalities in which blood and fire appear to have usurped the place of color? One will say, and not without reason, that it is madness. How dare you? How dare you, sir? Is this your contribution to the world of art? Are you a physician, sir? I think not. Then I humbly suggest that you not diagnose my brother's health, but study his work. Why? Why is it so necessary for so many of you to believe my brother was mad? Why does it seem so comforting to you? This should have been a beginning. His first sale should have been a beginning. He'd moved south to the village of Auvers. He had a room above the Café Revaux. He was under the care of Dr. Gachet, a kind and good man with an interest in art. He had a beautiful place to work. He had his wheat fields and his cornfields and his sunflowers. He was under someone's care. He was gaining recognition. He had sold. This should have been a beginning. My dear mother and sister, I am feeling much calmer, and the restlessness in my head has greatly quieted down. I often think of you both, and should very much like to see you once again. I am quite absorbed in the immense plain with wheat fields against the hills, boundless as the sea, delicate yellow, delicate soft green, the delicate violet of a dug-up and weeded piece of soil, everything under a sky of delicate blue, white, pink, and violet tones. I am in a mood of almost too much calmness to paint this. I said to him, Vincent, we are at the top of the hill. We are like horses in harness, and we are almost at the top of the hill. Now's the time to celebrate. My dear brother, there are many things that I should like to write you about, but I feel it is useless. There is this that I have always told you, that I shall always consider that you are something other than a simple dealer in art, that you have your part in the actual production of canvases, which even in this cataclysm retain their peace. For this is what we've got to. Things are very strained between dealers in pictures by dead artists and living artists. My own work, I am risking my life for it, and my reason has half foundered owing to it. That's all right, but you can choose your side, I think, acting with true humanity. But what's the use? What's the use? The last letter he ever wrote. I found it in his pocket. A week ago, I received a telegram from Dr. Gachet telling me that Vincent had injured himself seriously and that I should come. Dr. Gachet was with him when I arrived. Vincent was sitting up in his bed, smoking his pipe calmly. His face was pale, but peaceful. On Sunday, as usual, Vincent, just before noon, walked out to the wheat fields by the edge of town, carrying his easel and a gun. He shot himself in the breast. He must have lain there all day in the hot sun, because it was well after supper time when he staggered back into the cafe, stumbled up the steps, and collapsed in his bed. I sat by his bedside, and I held his hands in mine. He looked up at me with those blue, innocent eyes. And he had a look on his face like when we were children. And he'd broken one of my toys, and he was so sorry for it. He apologized to me for costing me so much money through the years. And he said, I've failed at so much in my lifetime. I hope I haven't failed at this as well. Dr. Gachet said, Vincent, you have a strong constitution. The wound is not serious. You have a good chance of recovery. But he wouldn't have it. Wouldn't have it. That stubborn mule wouldn't have it. He was determined to succeed in his own death. We sat up through the night, talking all night about about our childhood, about wheat fields and cornfields, and about the old stone barn. Late that night, I felt his hands grow weak. His voice grew fainter. I sat on the bed. I cradled him in my arms. I kissed his face. And he looked up at me and he said, "Theo, I wish I could die like this." And he closed his eyes. And I felt his heart stop. And I just held him with my eyes closed, not wanting to let him go yet. I felt his soul lingering near me for a moment. And then something went out of me, and he was gone. The minister at Auvergne said that because Vincent had taken his own life, the church could not condone such actions by having his funeral there. So Revaux closed down the cafe. We laid Vincent out on the billiard table and covered him with a sheet until a carpenter could be found to make a box for him. All his friends came to see him for the last time. Even Toulouse-Lautrec, who had himself just been released from an asylum. They all brought dahlias and sunflowers, because yellow was his favorite color. And we hung his best canvases about the cafe. Revaux lit candles, and Dr. Gachet arranged Vincent's easel, his paint box, and his little stool at the foot of the table. The minister wouldn't come to the cafe, so Dr. Gachet gave the service. His voice was so broken, I could barely understand him. But he's a brave man. And he loved Vincent so, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak at all. We were even denied the use of the church's hearse. And so Angeline Revaux rode horseback over the bridge to Mery to the nearest township and borrowed a hearse from the abbey there. And 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we took him to the cemetery. And we took him to a spot where an old stone wall borders a cornfield. His work was done. It was time for him to leave. Now he's off, quietly waiting for the rest of us. For me, with his passing, something sweet has gone out of the air. The wine has turned to vinegar. There are no words for the feeling of loss and grief. It is a grief without comfort. Grief I shall carry rest of my life. But I'm not alone. No, I'm not alone in my agony. Some of his true friends share a small measure of my sorrow. At the cemetery, before we returned him to the earth, his friends, his true friends, gathered round, the artists, the merchants, the farmers, the beggars. Yes, even some of the beggars from off the street. They knew. They knew of his genius and how special he was. And I wanted to tell them something. Something about Vincent. So they could know him like I knew him. They had to know. They had to know what he believed in. But I couldn't speak. And the moment was gone. Later, when everyone else had dispersed and I was alone again, I remembered the words of Ernest Renan, Vincent's favorite quotation. To act well in this world, one must sacrifice all personal desires. The people who become missionaries of religious thought have no other fatherland than this thought. Man is not on the earth merely to be happy, nor even to be simply honest. He is here to realize great things for humanity, to attain nobility, and to surmount the vulgarity of nearly every individual. This was the credo by which my brother lived, to accomplish great things for mankind. And he did. Now, at last, I have said the words. And I thank you. Perhaps now I can find some peace. My only hope is that Vincent has found the rest he so longed for. Life was such a burden to him. Now, as often happens, everyone will be so full of praise for his talents. No, my friends, he was so my own.